Good day and welcome to the Weekend Review here on CNC3. We begin this week with news that Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar has fired her Justice Minister Herbert Volney. The Prime Minister says that he deceived the Cabinet into believing that the Chief Justice and the Director of Public Prosecutions had agreed to the premature proclamation of the controversial Clause 34. For all the talk of a conspiracy, it seems, according to Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar, that Justice Minister Herbert Volney was the one with a secret dark enough to create public outcry, the likes of which this country has not seen for a very, very long time. He deceived the Cabinet on a matter involving the names of some of the country's highest office holders. The Prime Minister, breaking her silence for the first time on the matter, made it clear that when Section 34 came to Cabinet, she asked Minister Volney a specific question.
I specifically inquired of the Honourable Minister of Justice whether the Honourable Chief Justice and the DPP were consulted on these measures. The Honourable Minister of Justice drew my attention to paragraph 5 of the note, which stated that the Honourable Chief Justice had been consulted on a date for proclamation. He then confirmed to the Cabinet that he had the support and approval of both the Chief Justice and the DPP on this matter.
The Cabinet went on its word, she said, and approved the note for the President to proclaim, and as she outlined the details, she took a moment to clear Attorney General Annan Ramlogan of any wrongdoing.
I have spoken to the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, and he has informed me and confirmed that the Honourable Attorney General did not participate in this process because conventionally the Office of the CPC independently liaises with the Cabinet Secretariat and the Office of the President on such matters. I pause also to note that the Attorney General was out of the country during the period July 20th to August 4th.
With Section 34 proclaimed, the DPP came to the Attorney General and expressed concern, raising a red flag. Something was amiss, leading the Prime Minister to convene Parliament for the repeal. She says she then started her investigation.
I contacted the Honourable Chief Justice to inform him about the apparent contradiction between his concern on the early proclamation and our understanding through the Cabinet provided by the Honourable Minister of Justice and our discussions with the Minister of Justice. I humbly requested a report on the issue. The Honourable Chief Justice provided a written report, and he also provided notes taken at a meeting held on July 24th, 2012 with a specially appointed interministerial committee.
Now satisfied that there was no consultation with the DPP and Chief Justice on any partial proclamation, she sought to protect other Cabinet members from blame.
The Cabinet, on August 9th, in reliance upon the assurances by the Honourable Minister of Justice regarding the support of the Honourable Chief Justice and the DPP for the measures contained in his note to Cabinet, approved the early proclamation of Section 34 and subsequent proclamation of the rest of the Act to be January 2nd, 2013. The Honourable Minister of Justice had a duty to faithfully and accurately represent the position and views of the Honourable Chief Justice and the DPP. He failed so to do.
All fingers were pointing now at the Justice Minister Herbert Volney.
And the Cabinet relied in good faith and acted on his assurances in good faith. His failure to do so is a serious misrepresentation and amounts to material non-disclosure of relevant facts to the Cabinet, which effectively prevented the Cabinet from making an informed decision.
The Prime Minister said it was crucial she did not involve the Chief Justice in the wranglings taking place and could have taken earlier action but allowed all sides to speak. She apologized to the Chief Justice and the DPP for the debacle and told the media she had met with Minister Volney earlier in the day. The axe had fallen.
I have advised His Excellency the Acting President Timothy Hammersmith to immediately revoke the appointment of Mr. Herbert Volney, MP, as Minister of Justice. I have also advised that Ms. Crystalline Moore, Attorney at Law of Lambo Village, Tobago, be appointed a Senator and the Minister of Justice.
This, the Prime Minister says, must be a lesson to all, as she made it clear that the Cabinet would not be brought down by the negative actions of one or a few.
The integrity of my government will not be compromised by anyone, regardless of the office they hold. The consequences of such action are clear. I hold everyone who is entrusted to their job to be accountable And whenever I feel such trust is compromised or integrity breached, I will act decisively.
The dismissal followed weeks of debate in the national society coming from the civil society as well as labor unions and the business community. The opposition also held a major march through the capital city this week. To many who felt the opposition PNM would not attract support for its march, this was the answer. Here at Abercrombie Street, around 1:30 in the sweltering heat, they sang lustily, "We shall throw them out," as they marched uptown. They had gathered at Woodford Square for 1 in the afternoon, dressed in red, armed with placards, ready to show their disapproval with the government over the early proclamation of Clause 34 that favored party financiers, a decision many have deemed deliberate and calculated, and for which the government is yet to give a reason enough to appease those angered by it. A conversation between the police and political leader Dr. Keith Rowley, and then they were off, stopping first at the Ministry of National Security, where their protest march took on a different twist. With drums, they marched uptown. At Dr. Rowley's side, THA Chief Secretary Orville London, and here to show their support, MSJ leader David Abdullah, Vincent Cabrera, and others. Religious support as well, as some conducted mini ceremonies on the way. As they moved uptown in their volumes, look at the crowd as they walked outside the Bishop Anstey High School, nearing the Savannah. Many having joined along the way, the distance was only swelling the numbers. This took them around the Savannah, where police were not leaving anything to chance as they neared the US Embassy, given the threats that presently exist, but they moved past without a hitch. It is very rare that the Queen's Park Savannah is shut down at this time of the day or ever. But this is a time when students are going home from school and a lot of people are affected. But the PNM believes that this march, the first march that has been held by the party in a very, very long time, is very, very important to getting their message about the democracy of the country. A democracy, the PNM says, is under threat, but one they believe is being guarded by the raised voices of the people. But even if by then one had doubts, the sheer size of the crowd was staggering, as by the time the front had reached Queen's Royal College, the back had passed the embassy. As they neared President's house, the acting president, Timothy Hamilsmith, arrived under tight security. Here, a heavy police presence as the crowd stood in the rain, chanting and singing. Party officials gathered petitions, 25,000 of them, but when Dr. Rowley and his team tried to enter President's house, it created a security nightmare for the police.
One line! Media, get behind the line, please!
The police would form a bubble around them, eventually allowing them free passage without the crowd. Dr. Rowley and his team would emerge about 45 minutes later, telling the audience that he had asked the president for some specific things.
I have asked the president to trace the document backwards to its origin, the document that asked him to sign the proclamation, and make sure that at every stage in the proceedings, right down to the drafting of the cabinet note, that the country's rules, regulations and laws were followed. That he asked the Prime Minister to give him in writing an explanation as to why the cabinet did what the cabinet did on the 28th of August.
President of the Banking and General Workers Union, Vincent Cabrera, made his position clear.
When I got the invitation from Dr. Rowley, I pondered whether I should come here. And then I said, as I was marching today, I told Dr. Rowley, it's Kamala have me here. Because if they didn't do the nonsense they're doing, I would not have been here.
And so too MSJ leader David Abdullah.
That bad governance was an attack on our democracy. And what the people are demonstrating here today by your thousands is that people power can trump the power of those in office who are corrupt.
Dr. Rowley says he has asked the President to respond in a timely manner, vowing that this is not the end of the beginning, but the beginning of the end for the current regime. Earlier in the week, President George Maxwell Richards expressed his concerns about the controversial Clause 34 as he addressed an interfaith service at the beginning of the new law term.
It seems to me that the difference between making law and executing or application of the law is not clearly understood by all concerned.
And Chief Justice Ivor Archie also told the beginning of the new law term that he knew nothing about any early proclamation of the Administration of Justice Act.
It's always been our position, and we so advised, that implementation could not realistically take place before the first quarter of 2013. And we in the judiciary never discussed or contemplated partial implementation.
This is the Weekend Review. We'll take a short break and come back with a lot more.